Heidi ho, my peeps. Yes, I am bathtub vlogging, bath time confessionaling today. I've been doing some thinking. And those of you who know me know I do that constantly. In fact, I do it boringly often and then talk about it ad nauseum to you guys. So, if you don't want to hear about my deep thinking, click on through this video. But if you do, this is where I'm at. First of all, let's talk about the whole idea of deep thinking. I've always considered deep thinking to be a very important process, something that everyone should do, to try to see any given situation from both sides, to take a look at history, current information, whatever evidence is around to support either side of a situation, and then come up with your own conclusion about how you feel about this certain thing. How you feel and what you think about a certain thing, because thinking and feeling are two different processes, and that's basically the crux of what I want to talk about today, the difference between feeling and thinking. Okay, so I've always been, I have deep feelings, but I try to work out my deep feelings with my head. I've tried to think through, why am I so scared, disappointed, freaked out, worried, and nervous about our new POTUS, okay? Because that's emotional. That was a gut reaction, visceral reaction to him and to the inauguration and to all of that. So why? Why do I feel that way? So I've been sort of, teasing that through in my head. But as I've been doing that, it occurred to me, our previous president was the exact diametric opposite of our current president. Obama worked with his mind. You never really got a whole lot of feeling from him. Maybe some empathy, maybe a little bit, some of that, but he was a thinker, is a thinker. The new guy is not a thinker. The new guy he does two things well. He runs through the process of running a business. And running a business, incidentally, is a system that's set up like a chessboard, and then you run through the system, balancing your accounts and figuring out how much you've got to appropriate for this thing, and how long it's going to take before you pay that other thing off, and how much leverage can you find, what is your risk assessment, all that sort of corporate bullshit. That's what running a business is all about. To say it's not hard is a lie. It's a difficult job, but it's a thing that most people can learn, because it is a system. You don't generally think outside of the system of business running. You play out the situations based on a given set of circumstances. So it doesn't require a lot of creative thinking generally, but it requires being able to keep a lot of balls in the air at once, which is a talent, let me tell you. I learned all of this at the knee of the CEO of the company, the last company that I worked for, the publishing company. I just happened to sit on the board of that company, and I was the treasurer, or rather the secretary/treasurer of that company for a while. And I learned about how a small corporation works, and it's really no different from a big corporation. There's just more balls in the air, but they're basically all the same balls. So anyhow, I kind of got what that's all about. And I understand why our current president is approaching things the way he is. Based on my own experience, I get what he's doing. But here's the part that bothers me. His affect, his behavior, his essence is all about emotion. That's how he ran his campaign. That's how he behaved during his inauguration. And it remains to be seen how that will play out over the course of time. He's making a lot of moves this week that speak directly to his campaign promises. How effective those moves are going to be, again, that remains to be seen. Because, just because you say, hey, you know what? All you states out there, you make it easier for us to move through this dismantling of Obamacare. I mean, you can say that. That's a nice thing to say. But you still have to run through Congress, and you still have to run through many, many committees. I mean, dismantling the thing, or changing it, or amending it, or replacing it, or a little bit of all the above, that's going to take a long, long time. So, how important was that? Was that the executive order that he signed in the first few hours he was in office? The way I look at that, I think it was an emotional shot over the bow more than anything. Now, is that wrong? Probably not. That's probably going to be the way he operates, at least for the next couple of years while he's putting processes into place. There will be a lot of, I'm not going to use the word pandering. I would love to use the word pandering. I'm going to say playing instead. There's going to be a lot of playing to the motions of his base who put him in office. And I think most of what's happened this week has been about that. So, what he did that was different, at least from every bit of politics I've ever seen since I've been old enough to pay attention to it, is he reached in, he grabbed us by the gut. Well, some of us he grabbed by the pussy, but many of us he grabbed by the gut and squeezed real hard and caused a visceral reaction for those who have been feeling disenfranchised, upset, worried, pissed off, angry at the previous administration. For those guys, and I think they were probably mostly guys, although not all, but probably preponderantly men, man, that having their guts grabbed felt so good. Finally, somebody was standing up for them and how they were feeling and what they were thinking and what they were pissed off about. Finally, somebody was answering their questions. So it was that emotion and the action of those people that carried this new guy into office. So that puts people like me at a bit of a disadvantage because I try not to behave emotionally. I acknowledge the emotion that's there, but I try to think through things a little bit more fully. And so much of what I think is just, what's the word? Scenarios, okay? There's no way for me to know if a scenario that I spell out for you folks is gonna go down or not. But let me tell you a scenario that seems that it may go down, and it's this. The new guy is going to continue to, sorry about this, my hand's falling asleep. Whoa. And I dropped, whoa, am I upside down? I am. Okay. All right, let's see if I can get through this without dropping the phone again. I don't know if you guys got to see boob. I need to go back and check that out. Anyhow, so this is one scenario that I see. He's going to continue to do what he's doing, making proclamations about this and that, primarily not so much actionable proclamations as they are extensions of campaign promises, that sort of thing. And then concurrent with that, over the course of at least the next year, politicians are going to be scrambling to figure out where do they fit into this scenario? How are they going to maintain their power? What do they have to accept or fight against in order to both stay in Washington from a from the good graces of the president. And then, on the other hand, they have to figure out how to stay in Washington from the power of the people and their vote that's coming up in a couple of years. So that I wouldn't want to have any of those jobs at this point. What a stressor to try to figure out where to fall on any issue, how to vote. All of that's going to be really, really tough for Congress. So that's an ugly situation. So anyhow, I think that's going to be going on. I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a bottleneck. I think that the president is going to start out gangbusters, but as Congress and the other politicians in Washington begin to settle in to the new reality, I think he's going to have more and more opposition. He's going to be slowed down more and more by just the established way that the checks and balances work. So what is going to be really, really interesting, and I hope we get to this point just so that I get to see it and see what happens. What will be really interesting is how is he going to deal with opposition? I mean, opposition with teeth behind it. That's going to be fascinating because people in his position in business generally don't have a whole lot of opposition. It's more negotiation. In other words, they can generally get some, if not most, if not all of what they want through negotiation. But that's not how the government works. The government doesn't work through negotiation entirely. Now, of course it does to a certain degree. You pat my back, I'll pat yours. My lobbyist is going to do such and such for your pet project, and if you will sign this bill, blah, blah, blah. You guys know the drill. We've all seen it, okay? So when we get to that point, it's going to be really interesting to see how he reacts, to see if we get some genuine emotion coming from the president that is his own, not something reflected back from the way he thinks his constituency feels, but rather his own personal reactions to stuff. Now, have we gotten that through his Twitter feed? I don't know. I'm not sure. I wonder how much of the Twitter feed was scripted. We now know that the way he ran his campaign was absolutely brilliant, or the way Kellyanne ran his campaign was absolutely brilliant, because it acknowledged the base that was going to pull him through into the presidency, and it behaved in the way that base behaves: pissed off, angry, without a lot of without a nod to the other side, if you know what I mean. The flip side of that is being so wishy-washy that nobody knows what you think. So understand, I'm not necessarily putting that behavior down, because it was effective. So I don't know. I think that for people like me, that sort of behavior really bothers us, because we want things to be set. We want our feet on the ground. If our heads are in the clouds, that's okay, but we want our feet on the ground. We want to know what's under us. We want to know where the bottom is, if you know what I mean. And so much of the past year, 6 months, particularly the past week, no one really knows where the bottom is. So think about that. Where do you fall in all that? Do you trust your emotions more than you trust your head? Do you trust somebody else's emotions more than you trust their brain? And we're back. Once again, I forgot to put on airplane mode. So anyway, I just want to know what you think about that. Also, and this is really important, in the interest of full disclosure, there's the equal and opposite population within the liberal Democrat world of emotional non-thinkers and you know, we saw a lot of that kind of percolate here and there out of the women's marches. By and large, those women's marches were examples of the way it's supposed to happen when you protest. I mean, by and large, it was great. Almost no violence. I mean, it was just, it went down really well. But there was a lot of other stuff that occurred that is as equally offensive as the alt-right can be. I mean, not the alt-right, the far right can be. The far left is as equally offensive to me, with, you know, a lot of the social justice warrior behavior, the screaming and yelling, the, you know, Madonna's comment about thinking about blowing up the White House, and, you know, all that kind of stuff is just, none of that, you know, dropping to your knees and screaming, no, during the inauguration isn't going to help anyone. It's just going to make you look stupid, and it's going to soften your position and the position of everyone else on your team, whatever team that happens to be. So I'm not okay. I'm absolutely not okay with that either. I guess that is because of who I am. I tend to walk in the wide center. I'm willing to veer over toward a conservative stand on certain things, and on others, I tend to walk closer to a liberal stand. So I guess you could accuse me of being wishy-washy, except for that when I'm walking on the liberal side, I know why, and when I'm walking more towards the conservative edge, I know why. I can tell you why I feel and think the way I feel and think about these issues. So I guess in some ways you could call me an old-fashioned, middle-of-the-road American, but my road is pretty wide. I'm willing to go into, you know, into either territory pretty far, depending on my thoughts about any given situation. So anyway, so having said that, another thing that's happened, well, you know what? I'm going to save that. I'm going to save this next part of the talk for a separate video because it's important enough. I don't want it to get lost at the end of this video. So on that note, I'm going to say goodbye. I am feeling better. I'm doing a lot of thinking about how far I want to get involved in any of this. Am I just going to continue to watch eagerly from the sidelines, or am I going to do something? And if I do something, what is the something that I'm going to do?